Hello and welcome to another episode of Mysteries of the Bayou. I'm Roy.
And I'm Scarlett.
So today we've got a couple cases to talk about. One of them is a questionable death out of New Iberia, Louisiana. I think that'll be the first one that we start with. And we say questionable because we probably also too, we're a little bit late getting this episode out because we got some new information and a police report on this individual that added a little bit of a twist. So we just want to make sure that we got it right. So let's just kind of jump out into it. And so the first individual is Nelson Landry Jr. and he resided in New Iberia. So the night of Friday night in December, late December, like the 23rd, I think he went out for a night. He just got a new car. He just got a new car to him. It was a 1990 model, and this was in 2004. So he went out for a ride in his car, and he never came home. Mr. Landry was about 20 years old, and he didn't come home for Christmas. This was a Friday night, so he didn't come home Christmas. Didn't show up at work for on the next Monday, and his family finally went and made a report to the sheriff's office. Now, the other thing to kind of keep in mind at this point is that New Iberia, the city, did not have a police department. It had just been disbanded in, I think, in the beginning of 2004. Correct, Scarlett?
Correct, yeah, and they were reinstated in 2018.
Okay, so they, just in the same year, they had disbanded their police department. So the Iberia Parish Sheriff's Department is going to be handling this investigation. So Mr. Landry's mom goes to the sheriff's office, makes a missing person complaint, and come to find out that a couple days prior to this, there had been a car found. Mr. Landry's car had been found stuck in the mud out by a crawfish pond. And they had a huge search and didn't turn up anything. They had cadaver dogs. From what I have read anyway, his family and friends put out a very extensive search in the wooded areas on the fields from Olivier, all the way to Martinsville. And then they even had cadaver dogs, the whole thing. Now, kind of back up a minute and say his car was found out on Jeanerette Road by a crawfish pond. And so anyway, they did all the searching, didn't find anything. Then in February of 2005, they got another report of a body, and I've read two things. I've read that he was found drowned, and then the other thing, he was found with his head submerged in the water. So again, Scarlett, I'll get your input, but it's just it's unclear if he was submerged in the water. When I first read the material, I understood it to be that his body may have been laying up on the dry part with his head kind of laying off into the crawfish ponds. What was your take on that?
Yeah, I mean we've discussed this a little bit pre-show, and the only way we can really talk about this case is the death is, certainly suspicious. You have a vehicle that was found shortly after he went missing, and then in December of 2004. And then this body was found February of 2005. And, based on the police report, it's unknown to us how far the body was found in relation to the car. What state was the car in? Did it look like there was some, maybe he was under the influence? Was there some kind of struggle? There's just a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah.
Was this an accident? Just there's a lot of lingering questions, I guess.
Yeah, and that's where we really want to. These shows, of course, that we do, we are trying to get information out to the public of incidents or murders or missing people that really haven't been publicized or haven't been publicized in a while. And just like this, there was a few articles written around the time of that he went missing, and then there was another follow-up piece, I think, written in 2018. But it was just more from the family perspective. It wasn't really going into the case, so there's just not a lot of details. And then, we had actually recorded the show because I may have misunderstood and thought for sure that it was a murder, because I'm reading another book that mentioned this as an unsolved murder. But after we got the police report and some other information, they did declare it as a drowning, but there was no other indication if it was accidental, if they're, think that they feel that there was something else going on. The one other thing that they did mention is that they polygraphed somebody who was known to have been with him, within his last hours or days, and that polygraph was inconclusive. But again, there's a lot of information that we got on the car. The car was found stuck. Somebody was out running their crawfish traps, called in and said, hey, there's a car abandoned, stuck out here in the mud. So when the sheriff's department went out and checked on it, of course, they look around, they don't find anything. And then they went back the next day. It was so muddy that they actually had to have the farmer pull the car out of the mud with his tractor to pull it back up to, a hard enough surface where they could load it up on a tow truck. But in the police report, it says that he was found on the banks, or just going to try to find it here, that it made it sound like that the car was found right next to a crawfish pond, but they never go on to say, is that the same crawfish pond that Mr. Landry was found in? And if it was, how did these extensive searches that you would think start at the vehicle and then work their way out from there, how did they miss that? There's a lot of explanations. He could have been submerged, I guess. It's just hard to believe that in this close proximity that they wouldn't have seen him if he was laying there.
Right. And, anyone, especially people from the area that we know that the commercial crawfishing, the rice fields are irrigated, and, and that could be, the water could be shallow, it could be 12 to 16 inches. It's possible that things could be concealed. But, there's also a chance if it's in season that someone is tending to those, tending to their traps and is pretty, is out there on the scene and, aware of the situations. So that also is a little bit, interesting, I guess, in this case.
Yeah, they found $477 in his right front pocket of his jacket. So, that makes you think that, well, it must not have been, robbery as a motive or somebody panicked. Again, it's not really a huge clue, but if somebody had known he had that money, they definitely would have taken it. But again, they don't mention the car keys being found. They don't mention his wallet being found. And there's just a lot of things that weren't really covered. There was more actually, again, in prepping for this episode, we were talking about it, and there was more dialogue in the police reports written about the finding of the vehicle and getting it pulled back to dry land than there actually was about the finding of Mr. Landry's body. It just said that he was trying to read back through here, that said that cadaver dogs were also used in the search. Many tips came into the sheriff's office and were covered by detectives. A polygraph test was conducted on one of the last persons seen with Landry. The results came back inconclusive. Let's see.
Yeah, and it's interesting about the coroner's report. I would want to know if it's even possible to get an exact time of death, based
Right.
on Because that would be really helpful in establishing this timeline. You know, he went missing over the weekend on Christmas on top of it. So, you know, it's I have no idea when the actual, you know, event happened.
Yeah, the police report actually stated that the body was found floating in a pond off of LA 87, whereas I think the news reports are the ones that said that he was found with his head laying down in the water. So again, it just it would be great for anybody that had any details. You know, of course, reaching out to us would be great. We would certainly like to have more information, but also reaching out to the Iberia Parish Sheriff's Office and, you know, letting them know it would be good to piece together the last days or hours of movement to see. Again, it's hard to imagine that if he was in the same crawfish pond that this guy was running his traps in and the car was setting by, and then with all the searches that he had been in the same area for this entire 2 months. That, again, nothing that can be proved one way or the other. It's just a lot of questionable material. Yeah, that's really, I don't know. You have anything else that you want to add?
No, you know, you made a good point pre-show. It would also be nice to know if, you know, his keys or his wallet was also found on his person, or were those returned to his family? Just, you know, that could all be vital information about, you know.
Yeah, and I think that you uncovered that there was a little bit of an odd timing in the returning of the car. You know, they found the car in December. They reported him missing in December. They found him. They found the car and reported him missing all within a few days of each other. But then it was like they just returned the car in prior to finding him, but they didn't really. Sounds like they didn't go over it much forensically. Is that kind of what you got?
Yeah, and you know, again, this could be to your point that, you know, the New Iberia Police Department was changing management over to the Sheriff's Department. So this might have coincided with that exact time. And it seems that there's a little bit of disconnect in terms of, you know, and in the actual police report, possibly that, you know, when he was missing in terms of the timeline and those sorts of, you know, kind of important details, but also, you know, easy to, you know, have, you know, some confusion towards.
Yeah, and the police reports that I've got, you know, there's nothing that was stamped that it was an ongoing investigation. So again, this is just my opinion, and I'm taking it on myself that, you know, they have ruled this a drowning, and they are not pursuing it any further than that. And again, if you read the news articles, my opinion again was that the family thinks that there was a little bit more involved in that, you know, that there was probably a crime committed, that somebody was involved in this. So anyway, again, we just ask if you have any more details. We would love to talk to you, or again, reach out to the Iberia Parish Sheriff's Office, and please let them know of anything that you may have that could help them. All right, well, if you don't have anything else you want to add on that, we're going to move over to another one that this is another very sad case, kind of a strange case that's got no information. So this one, her name is Carrie Ann Luckey, and she was found in Fort Worth, Texas. And again, we're gonna mention her at the end of this episode, just because there wasn't a lot of information on Mr. Landry. And this one here actually was found. She was found not too far, maybe a half a mile from where I live. Now this has been. She was found back in 1988, so the area has changed. We're still very rural, but you know, 30 years ago, it was even more rural. There were no houses, really no businesses or nothing out where she was found. So the story on Carrie is that she had moved to the Fort Worth area from Oklahoma in 1979, and then it was her birthday, May 6, 1988, and she was going out to celebrate. Again, they said that she telephoned her mother on May the 7th, 1988, and said that she would see her soon. Again, we've talked about this, and there's a lot of assumptions there that maybe she called after midnight and made it May the 7th, because it doesn't, the timing of the events of when she went missing and then finding her, it doesn't sound like that, she would have called during the day on May the 7th. Is that kind of what you think, Scarlett?
Yeah, it's speculated that she was probably killed in the wee hours on May 7th.
Right.
Following her birthday celebration.
Yeah, and that's what's kind of strange is that, when she would have called her mom. Again, I'm just speculating because you got to think back in that day, there were no cell phones. So, it wasn't like she was texting. She probably would have had to go to a payphone to make that phone call. So if she did, it would have had to, like I said, been after, it could have been in the wee hours of the morning. But so that was on May the 6th, May the 7th. And then they found her body. There's a tree trimming crew trimming trees on the road right of way that found her on May the 12th out off of Silver Creek and White Settlement Road, just south of Farm to Market 1886. In what was then, like I said, it was a very sparsely populated part of Tarrant County, just west of the community of Lakeside. So her mother, she filed a missing persons report on May the 19th. Then and the other thing is, like, I don't guess she had any ID on her, because my understanding was they didn't really put everything together until mom filed the missing persons. Then they, kind of put it together that this is who this was. They said that she was stabbed over 70 times in her neck and chest, and it later was determined that she was sexually assaulted. So, this was just a brutal attack for such a young lady. The other thing that was unclear is kind of really who she lived with, what area of town. We just, again, not a lot of details. And because they said that they were having trouble piecing together the movements of her last week. And so it just made me think that she must have lived alone, because if she'd lived with mom, they probably would have known, at least a day or so, kind of what was going on, but they couldn't find anybody who had seen her the last week of her life. And again, we reached out to the Tarrant County Sheriff's Office and to the Texas Rangers, and both cited this as an ongoing investigation. We're not able to provide any investigators for the interview itself or provide any other documentation for us. Yeah, so that one's terrible. I know it's very, very old. Again, we looked for some friends or relatives of either one of Carrie and Luckey or Nelson Landry Jr. weren't unable to get anybody to respond to us for an interview, because these are both cases that we would just like to have more information to fill in the gaps, if there is even any available. And, from what we've read, I think the kind of the same scenario with both of them. They both go out, don't return home, and are later found dead. And there's just not a lot of, I think, unfortunately, the killer of Carrie and Luckey and whoever was with Nelson Landry Jr. those last, hours, they're the only people that are going to really know what happened and can fill in those gaps. Whether they're going to be willing to come forward at this time, nobody knows that. All right. Starla, have you got anything you want to add to that Carrie and Luckey story?
Yeah, and you might have mentioned this, especially if she lived alone. I don't know if any of the articles mentioned if she had her own vehicle, was it at her? No, nothing like that. Yeah.
No,
Strange.
yeah, no. That's the other thing, is they didn't mention, like if she had gone out to some place, was her car found at that place? And or was it at home? But no, there was never any mention of her vehicle. And then again, there was no mention of her personal belongings, a purse, wallet, billfold. And that's why I think that it took them, about a week to put this together from the time that she was found until her mother filed a missing persons report, which, that's kind of another, again, we haven't spoke to anybody directly, so all we can do is take what we have found at face value. And there was, about 12 days went by from the time that she went missing until the mom filed the missing persons report. Because even if she called her on May the 7th, I think that would add a little bit more urgency. If one of my children had called and said, hey, I'm going to drop by and see you in a little bit, and they didn't, I'm not sure why it took 12 days to make that report. Again, what we have to go back to is the time of 1988, and things were so much more different. Everything wasn't as instant as it is today. Police
Latchkey
agencies.
kids.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I was going to point out latchkey kids. It's, 80s,
Yeah.
totally different thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like back in the day, the law enforcement agencies would put people off. It's like, especially somebody of age of 17, 18, and be like, oh, they're just a runaway, or they just took off and, went on their own, holiday, and they'll be back soon. And so there's definitely good reasons why there could be that length of time. But on the other hand, it's like if somebody called on in the morning and said, hey, I'm coming to see you, if they don't show up, I'd probably be a little bit more urgency to find out what happened to them sooner rather than later. Just my opinion.
Right. And, I think with both of these cases, with Nelson Landry and as well as, Carrie, surely there's got to be someone that knows something, even if it's the smallest detail. And, with Carrie, it just seems, that you reported that she was stabbed over 70 times. That just seems, very kind of horrible and also very peculiar. It seems almost personal. Yes. Or, possibly was that if you have that kind of offender, maybe there's other cases in that, in the area or surrounding area of that time. 'Cause that just seems kind of like an outlier. It just seems really stands out at you,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of rage, and, from all the reading and watching on TV that I do, they say that, when you stab somebody, that's very personal. So, I think this was very personal, somebody with a lot of rage, and, things happen where they are one off, but I'm kind of like you. If this happened and they got away with it, then you have to ask, is this the only thing that ever happened that they were ever involved in? Because usually it doesn't start with stabbing somebody 70 times. There's usually things that lead up to something that drastic. And,
sure.
The other thing, you mentioned her car or the lack thereof a car, but the other thing that would be nice to know is, where she went that night. We really don't even know, did she go out to a bar? Back in that day when you turned 18, again, in Texas, we've changed the drinking age from 18 to 21 so many times. I can't keep up with, what it was at this time. But, typically that's kind of a rite of passage. You turn 18, you go out to a bar. So I'm assuming that she had gone out, but it doesn't say she went out with friends. It doesn't say she went out with, boyfriend. There's just no mention of some of that key information like that. So it would just be interesting to be able to fill in the gaps to see what happened if anybody has any information. Again, this one is currently being held by the Tarrant County Sheriff's Department, and I do think that the Texas Rangers were assisting them at the time. So if you have any information, please reach out to either one of those agencies and let them know. So maybe we can find some answer. Then, a lot of people may be wondering, well, great, good gravy, that one is 1988. Why are we even talking about that? But we just had a recent case here in the Fort Worth area that was from 1974. So it was like, I think it was like 54, 56 years old. And they just brought just arrested somebody, and we're going through the process, but they uh, think that he is a DNA match for this one. So it can happen, and that's why that was the impetus for us wanting to start this show. Or there, as far as I know, with Carrie and Luckey, there was one small article ran at the time when they found her body, and that's been it. There was no other information out there. With Nelson Landry Jr., there were a couple small articles, and then for the last 16 years, there was maybe one follow-up with his family. So, we just really want to reach out, publicize it, because somebody does know something. Somebody, like with both of these, somebody saw them out that night, even if it wasn't the person with them. Maybe they went to a convenience store, maybe they were in, a hamburger place, maybe they were at a bar. So, just somebody coming forward to fill in just the slightest amount of information could be hugely helpful in the investigation of either one of these cases. All right, well, that's all I've got. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, actually,
Okay.
hopefully we have some listeners, and if anyone's listening, if you get a chance and you like us, please leave us a review on iTunes and wherever you get your podcast. If you're able to leave a review, we'd much appreciate that. And remember, we're still starting out, so please be nice.
Right.
But we'll take anything. Yeah.
Just an update on that. We've always been on the big four: iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify. But this week, I've made an effort to make sure that our feed is going to, I think, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Pandora, Amazon, and some of these will take some time to come up. But if you get your podcast off those, just please be patient. We're trying to push it out to as many outlets as possible. It's just, a matter of limited resources and time trying to get it done, but we will get it out there. So hopefully you'll be able to find us on any place that you could get your podcast very soon. Do we want to mention do you want to talk about the bookstore?
Yeah, that would be great. And I think you have a book you might want to recommend as well, something off your nightstand that you've been reading.
Yeah. You have the information for them?
Yeah. So for our listeners, there's a great new local bookstore in downtown Lafayette. It's called Beau Soleil Books. We highly recommend that you guys go check it out. It's great to have, independent bookstores, and great to show love. And they are, as I said, in downtown Lafayette. And I think, Roy, do you have any maybe possible recommended reading material that they might want to check out at the bookstore?
Yeah, I've got one. I did actually pull this off the nightstand, but it is the Louisiana's Rogue Sheriffs. This was a Culture of Corruption, written by Tom Aswell. What it is, it's a pretty lengthy book. It just takes a lot of the parishes that have had law enforcement that has gone awry in some manner. It just takes it and tells their story. And that's kind of actually, reading this when they were talking about the Iberia Sheriff's Department. That sheriff is not there any longer, so we're not going to mention that name, but he's been gone for, I think, what did you say, about 4 or 5 years now, maybe. That's how we found out about Mr. Landry. So it's a good book. It's very disturbing to think that all this stuff has happened, but it's written very well. It was current. It's published in 2019, but there are some incidents that go way back. So definitely a good read. And as we do other episodes, we'll talk about some other books, because I think I can speak for both of us that we both love books. We love writing, and for me personally, I like the book. I'm not an electronic reader on a tablet. I can't do that yet. So love to have a book in my hand. Yeah, I love to have a book in my hand, carry it around. So bookstores are the, I mean, it sounds kind of dorky, but they're the coolest places to hang out, just to go, be quiet, read, and look at all the great books that they have. So,
Yeah, and I also use my Kindle, but I appreciate still being able to go into a bookstore and take pictures of books that I want to read on my phone. I know I'm probably not alone in that. So please visit Beausoleil Books. They're on Jefferson Street in Lafayette. Let's help keep bookstores alive. So we have that option.
right. All right. Well, Scarlett, thanks a lot. And don't forget, as being able to find us on all the major podcast platforms. You can also go to www.mysteriesofthebayou.com. We will have the episode and show notes. You can actually access our player and listen to it there as well. So don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach us at either Roy or Scarlett. Roy at mysteriesofthebayou.com or Scarlett at mysteriesofthebayou. If you have any information that you're uncomfortable going to law enforcement, you can always reach out to us. You can always reach out to us with case submissions, more ideas of some things we can cover. We would love to hear from you and do things that people want to hear about.
Great.
All right. So until next time, take care of each other. Thank you.
Bye.